Hello, and welcome to Hard Hat Heroines, project highlights from women in construction, with your hosts, Eve and Sarah. Welcome to another episode of Hard Hat Heroines. I'm very excited to have our guest, Gabriela, with us today. Gabriela, currently an operations director with Mace for the Life Sciences division. We work together on Bloom, which is actually a project that I've talked about on the podcast before. And we've followed each other a bit. We were both at Multiplex
Without knowing each other, but it was
Exactly.
just a matter of time for us to be able to work together.
Exactly. And then we worked together on Bloom, where you were the project director, which was an incredible experience for me. And not very common, unfortunately, in construction where we are today to have a female project director. It's not something that you see very often on buildings. It was really great to see women represented at that level of seniority. We've both worked for Mace, following
Yeah,
on from that. So yeah, it's quite funny to see how our paths have tracked.
that's true. That's true. I see a lot of people in the market that is doing this kind of cycles and they are working in similar companies. We are going to meet each other anytime in the
The
construction
type of
industry. I can guarantee that we are going to do many other projects together.
It's a small world. It's like
It
the
is.
second largest global industry, but it's nonetheless a small world. Gabriela, how did you get into the industry?
It's funny because I'm not the kind of person that would say I knew it. I wanted to work with construction since I was born. It was not the case. To be honest, I remember to be a kid and think that I was going to be a doctor or anything like that. Very late, I decided that I wanted to work with construction. And when I I went to talk with my parents and I said, look, I find out I know what I want to do. I want to be an engineer. My father was terrified. He was a lawyer, but for some time in his career, he was a lawyer working in a construction site. But he was working in a construction site of a oil pipeline they were building between Venezuela and Brazil, crossing Amazonas. Imagine the construction site in the 70s. When I said I wanted to be an engineer, he straight away imagined myself in the middle of the forest dealing with everything he dealt with. He was terrified and thought, no way. I end up going to architecture because under my father's eyes, being an architect was more acceptable. During university, it was very, very clear I was an engineer, not an architect. All the disciplines like structure, calculus, electrical installations. I was very good on electrical installations. So all the disciplines that was more towards engineer was the ones that I was doing great. And when it goes to design and drawings and things like that, it wasn't for me. I did well. I finished my university, but it was clear from the beginning that I was going towards a construction career rather than a career as an architect. And then when I finished university, straight away I started turning my career towards a construction workplace. I finished the university in Brazil. I went to Spain, and there I started working for a main contractor straight away. And I always say that the moment you start working with a main contractor, you're not an architect anymore. You never comes back to the design side of the architecture. You work with construction. That's it. As my daughter would say, I'm a builder. So that's
Yeah.
where I am.
Gabriela, I can attest you have that engineering brain, like that level of understanding what we're building and that level of detail. It felt like a different level to me than what I was used to with design, not to put designers down, but there's something different that you have. So that makes perfect sense to me.
I just left university. I was in Spain starting my master degree. My knowledge at the time was very limited. It was my beginning of career. My first job there, I was working in a department that was the tender, the bid process, right? Doing bids. But I was the technical assistant. I remember the first thing I did, they gave me a very complex hospital project to tender. Was huge because was in Spain they don't do very tall buildings. It was huge but was spread across a site. And then he said, we need to be very efficient and we need to build this with the less amount of cranes possible. Go. For someone that is just beginning, you start thinking about, okay, so cranes. I need to build that actually, right? To do the design was just the first step. Now we need to make this happen. It changed the way you think about it, because you start understanding that as an architect was very nice to imagine nice buildings, but somehow the building needs to stand. And how you're going to do that is our responsibility.
I love this. Even with concept architects, my experience of Mace was just like, how are you going to build it? Think about the logistics. It was always really interesting. But yeah, there's the design and there's how do we actually build and construct it, and get it to function. It's a lot of magic. But you're rare, at least in my experience. It's interesting that you tacked to construction over the design, because stereotype is typically to the kind of to other ways. Was it an innate preference, or did you prefer the characteristics? Was just the work more interesting?
It's more interesting. It's nicer to see. The good thing about working with construction, in some professions, you don't see a material, you don't see an object done at the end of your work. I always compare, for example, a psychologist. They never see if what they are doing is working. Sometimes it's very complicated to see that. But in construction, you see a process, see it growing, and then you see the product and you say, okay, done, close the page, let's go to the next one. Design has a bit of this. You also have a process where you need to consider loads of things to finalize your design and say, okay, the design is done. But in many times in my life, you see that design is never done. The design can always be improved. And we are going to talk about some projects later that you see that there was many stages that we need to say that's enough, but not because the architect thought was enough, but because we had to stop. We need to move on. There is always something new you can change. There is many ways of doing it more efficient, of doing it better, of doing it faster, of doing it cheaper, anything. But you can see a product at the end. For me, the driver was always, this product has to be incredible, because at the end of the day, that product is the one I look and I say, okay, I did that. That's why I end up going from the design construction, and I can clearly see what is the construction bit and how the construction is important and what the construction does during the design, what the inputs that's this engineer builder mind can bring to the design team in terms of what's the safest way of building, what can we change to make it happen in a very safe way or more efficient way. There is always something that we can add to the design team.
Do you have a preference, D&B or traditional?
I do. I would be lying if I say no. I think the design and build is much more interesting, especially because of this input we have during the design. I know that the market will never quite accept this, but if we as main contractors could be appointed in a very, very early stage, I think would be the best scenario because of everything we can add to the design, all the knowledge we bring to the design team in a moment that to change the design, it's simple, is easy, and is cheap. Because when you have the design complete, to come back and change something that's a conceptual element of the design, to come back and change this, you are too late. You have a deadline. You cannot spend another 4 months in design. The fees are considerable. If the client could understand the importance of the main contractor in this process and perhaps allow us, even if it's a very light touch, but allow us to be involved in a very early stage, this would be great.
It seems to me that if we brought all that forward, we could go a bit slower during design and feasibility and faster in the build and hit program.
Sometimes the mentality is, if I spend a lot of time in the design, I will have a more complete, a more coordinated design, and my cost can be confirmed before I go to site. Perhaps this is the mentality of keeping this very long design. This is not what normally happens, because the design team needs the input from subcontractors, of specialists, of people that will be building this, and they don't have. So they will do assumptions. They will finish the design the best they can. They will use the knowledge they have from previous projects that sometimes are similar but not the same, and complete the design the best they can. And Then when the main contractor, the specialist subcontractors, the team that will be building or installing certain element of the project will come and say, this doesn't work.
Yeah, and then you end up in this time crunch situation. I think it's frustrating for subbies as well. You're saying this is what we've got to do, but this doesn't make any sense. And kind of through the tender stage or when they've gotten to site and got more information, but somehow that whole design piece needs to be pulled back with the specialist contractors as well. We'll come on to Bloom shortly. The integrated developer model is one way that could be happening.
You have much more possibilities of bringing these people in a very early stage when you have an integrated model. But we know that this is not normal in the market. We were lucky to work in a project that has this kind of delivery model, but most of the people will never have this opportunity.
100%. And if anyone's not sure what the integrated developer model is, it means the client is the main contractor. So the client is building, and then they bring in subcontractors, of course, to complete the work. We had a client within the team, that was our leasing team, our development team, who were wanting to get the building leased at the end. A very interesting experience to work that way rather than the traditional client main contractor way. I wonder if that will be part of the future. We'll see. Shall we jump on to some, is this in Brazil, this project?
Of course, I was going to select one project in Brazil because I'm from Brazil. I think the construction market in Brazil and the technology they use is improving a lot. But this project was a very, very special project. This was the first time Foster and Partner were designing a project in Brazil. At the moment, I was senior design manager. When you work for the first time in a different country with a different market, there is a lot to learn. There is a lot to understand about the local market. In this situation, although we are talking about Foster and Partner, that is one of the most amazing architects companies in the world, and of course the design team that we had involved in this project, they were brilliant. There was a very important question all the time: what's available in Brazil? The knowledge they had when they start the project was the knowledge they have from UK. Any material you want, you can find here. Any technique you want, you can find someone here. But in Brazil, this is a completely different world. So, and of course, it was very important for the project to use local materials, local finishes. This project was being certified as a LEED Gold, so there was a lot of sustainability requisitions that would not allow them to bring material from Europe to finish the project. It was a bilateral learning curve, because at the same time that I was as senior design manager, and because I'm an architect, working with architects that are just incredible. They have the best ideas you can imagine. And I was learning so much. It was so amazing, that experience. There was the other way around, of them looking at me and saying, what can we do? What can we deliver? How we do that? And we went to loads of factories in Brazil for them to understand, with the material we had, what we could achieve, how could we change, perhaps was the manufacture process, or what could we do? Because of course they don't want to deliver something off the shelf. You don't hire Foster and Partner if you want off the shelf product. What was the limit, what they could do. The team delivering the project was one of the best teams I worked in my life. Everyone was so perfectly connected to deliver this project. For the rest of my life, when I think about high performance team, I think about this team and all this learning between everyone involved to deliver the first Foster and Partner project in Brazil.
That's a strong first project. Fosters and Partners are world renowned, so to be the first project in Brazil is incredible. On the next screen, it's still the same project.
Yeah,
right?
the previous picture was the main lobby. It's not ground floor because the project is seafront, but there is a port. So what they did was to raise the reception to a upper level. So when you arrive to the main lobby of the building, that is the most important part of the office space, there is this first wall, that's this stone wall. There is a escalator that you can take to the upper level where you have the reception, and then the main reception you have sea views, and it's Rio de Janeiro. The views are amazing. The city is the landscape is incredible. So what they did very wisely was to highlight the city around the building using the architectural elements of the building.
Nice. Gabriela, what was in the building? Was it a mix of commercial use and residential?
No, this was purely commercial. You have only office space. This area of Rio de Janeiro was completely degraded for many years. The government decided to invest in this area to create a better use. It was very complicated in terms of logistic and landscaping for this area. There is a large project of landscaping and revitalization to allow residential projects to come as well, because of course we know that for an area that is a very poor area of the city, but it's funny because this was a very poor area, but with the best connections to airports, city center, everything. So to make sure they could bring residential projects, office spaces, and everything that city needs to sustain itself, this was the first project built there. If you see this image, you can clearly see that around there is not much happening, but was the first project in this area. Today, the landscape is completely different because they managed to bring these different investments and create residential and commercial and office spaces. There is a museum built next to this building that is from Calatrava, Santiago Calatrava. That's amazing as well. So now there is this mixture of culture, residential, commercial that makes a city. But this was the first building. There was nothing around, absolutely nothing.
In the photo, it's very much like a beacon. What fascinates me is that when you create buildings like this, it like lifts the whole area and it brings investment from others. And I often hear people complain about, oh, we got the expensive architects, but buildings like this bring up the whole area. Some of my frustration is a lot of the stuff gets built now. It's not particularly nice to look at. The rooms are really small, particularly in residential. These aren't spaces people want to be around or be part of. People want to be around nice things. I
Yes.
think it's a really nice beacon and it's lifted the whole area.
The first buildings, not only this one, but all subsequent buildings were done by a renowned architect. There was an important use given to it because the whole plan was that we understand the moment you have something nice going on, everyone else wants to come. So this was the whole plan for the area, and it worked.
But master planning at its best, it looks stunning.
So it's a port around. Yeah, it's not a passengers port. It's much more.
Yeah, it's freight.
And then you can see the mountains in the background. Rio de Janeiro, beautiful. Big columns, impressive.
This big column that you see, if you see outside of the building, there was one of the columns that are inclined and goes to the ground floor. During construction between us, the team involved, we used to call this as a mega column because it was indeed a mega column. There was a steel frame company in Brazil that was responsible for this project. They were incredible because, again, they never designed anything like that before. So all the team that was involved in the structural element of the building, there was some connections that there was no standard for these connections. So when they start doing these connections, the design of these connections on this mega column, there was no US or European standard that they could use to validate their calculations. So there was a series of tests and assessments that they had to do with the whole design team involved to be able to complete this.
With no standards to compare it against, how did you do it? You mentioned the whole design team got involved.
We had to involve design engineers from Brazil, a couple of offices from US got involved as well, because you need to peer review these calculations and the assessment they did in many levels to go to a point that you say, okay, that's it, this will work, we are fine with that, you can proceed.
Okay, so it was a peer review that helped reduce the risk.
Yeah, there were so many technical challenges in this project. Of course, at the beginning, when they start the excavation, there was some foundings. There was a pier. In Brazil, it's not like Europe that you find Roman remains or anything like that, but there was a pier that was like 500 years old, almost the age of Brazil. So of course we had to stop everything until they finalized all the digging and understanding what it was, took everything out, sent to a museum, and then they allow us to to complete this.
Okay.
This
Okay.
project, there was so many people involved. The meetings for the project was most of the meetings was online because now it's very normal. At the time wasn't,
Yeah.
but there was some in-person design meetings. And then there was people flying from US, from Europe, from other parts of Brazil. There was people flying from everywhere to Rio de Janeiro to discuss the project. Every time we had a meeting in person, the agenda was so long. We used to do like, okay, let's do a 3 days workshop. We used to go there and we used to stay like 3 days in a room, everyone working, go through the agenda, make sure that we tick everything that we need to do, and then everyone fly out.
Ahead of its time.
That was an amazing project.
Such a cool project example. So this next project, was this the project you worked on for Multiplex or one of?
Yes. So this is completely different. I fast forward a bit in time. This was the first project I worked here in UK. Was also the first time that the Four Seasons hotels were doing a residence project here in UK. So it's a residential project, completely different from the previous one, but was a very high-end residential project. So in terms of finishes, luxury, and everything that you can imagine, it was involved in this project. And this
Right.
project, the team involved in the project, there was different personalities, there was different knowledges, different skills involved to deliver this project. Completely different from my experience in off-sea development. For example, the swimming pool image, if you see the back wall on the swimming pool, you can see that there is tree. This tree is carved to a block of marble. So the marble was extracted from Italy. We went there to choose exactly the marble they wanted. Then it was all sent to China, because in China there is a person that carves the stone. These are branches of cherry trees. So they carved all the stone and then they sent back here to Europe, to UK, for us to install it on the wall. It's a piece of art. We cannot say that is a finish. It's not a finish. It's a piece of art that involved a lot of people, a lot of logistic to get it done, to get installed. The installation was very complex because it was a very limited space. There is no much room there. The stone was done by measure. There was no tolerance whatsoever. If you break one piece of that stone, it's ruined. You need to start all over again. So a complex installation, but it's a piece of art at the end of the day.
It's incredibly beautiful.
Did either of you get to visit Chelsea Barracks?
I did.
How do you reckon it compared to this?
It's the same level of finishes. There is some elements in each of these super high standard residential projects in London. Every time they launch, they need to reinvent something, do better than the previous one did. So there is a competition, sort of, that they need to make it better. If you look very high level, high end projects that I visit when I was with Multiplex, for example, the swimming pool is a key one. When I start this project, the first thing they said, Gabriela, you are responsible for the swimming pool. Deal with that. Because in Brazil, swimming pool is very normal. And any residential project that you build, before coming to London, I worked in a residential project there that, okay, was 5 residential towers, but there was 6 different swimming pools in the project. Because it's like building a resort. People want different swimming pools, outside, inside, with a waterfall, without waterfall. There is always something. When I came here, they said, Gabriela, you know everything about swimming pool. It's yours. Every swimming pool has something new. They need to challenge themselves because swimming pool is not something you see everywhere. So they are always trying to find how to prove theirs is better than the rest. You see different things, and I love this. I think that's amazing, that the ingenuity to create and to develop new details and new finishes, and how they are going to do something more special. I think that's great.
Very, very beautiful project. Now we have a project that I am extremely intimately acquainted with. I think we were based on the 3rd floor of this project for quite some time together. And then we
Yes.
moved on to one of the retail units, didn't we? So
You
we
are
were
very lucky. You are very lucky because when you came on board, we were on the third floor. When I start, we were in the basement.
I hate
There
being
was
in the
no building
basement.
on top of us.
And
Oh,
and
God.
how did you guys meet?
My first day, I remember Gabriela saying to me when I started on this project, you said to me, "I'm so happy that you're here." And I think maybe it was partially because QS was very site-based, like I did tend to be there and present. The base build was done when I started. I already had like PC on the base build. Cat A was still underway. And then we kind of went through to like Cat B plus for ready to work together. So I must have been on this project for about 9 months or so, I reckon, still from that point. And also, it's just always nice to have another woman on the team, isn't it? And you are such a genuine champion of women in construction, because a lot of people will say they are, but it's very different to walk the talk. And having worked under you, like, I know you care about women in the industry and you're fantastic to work for. That's how we met. Gabriela was awesome, so welcoming to me when I started on that project.
It's so good to hear that you have this memory.
Yeah, it's cool. It's something really special.
I think when we talk about women in construction, sometimes I just think that people don't fully understand what means to be a woman in construction. There is a view that if you have women in construction, you need to celebrate Women's Day. You give flowers to people that are on site, and they think that by doing that, they are celebrating women in construction. I have a view that there is no difference between a woman doing something and a man doing something. I think this is the point. We had many women involved in the project and delivered the same thing. The importance is, and one thing you said, and it's very well spotted, the reason I say to you, I'm so happy to see you here, because I saw your CV and I said, she has the technical background I need. She has the skills, she has the experience. And yes, it's amazing to have another woman in the team, because I think that the air, the environment changes when you have more women involved. But skills are the main point. And I think that, see, I can spend like 3 hours here talking about this, but I think that there is some important things to keep in mind. We always say that there is no many women working in construction. Sometimes we hear people saying that there is no many people in leadership, many women in leadership positions in construction. The only way to change that is giving the skills, is to taking women that are coming from the university, the undergraduates, and saying, okay, where do you want to go? They need support to get the skills to learn what they need to learn. Because the moment they have the right set of skills, doesn't matter anymore if it's a woman or if it's a man or if it's whatever, because then you have the skills. Your CV, you erase your name, your gender, anything, and you have what they are looking for to deliver the project. Mace just released the inclusion pay gap report. When you start reading the report, I think that everyone's eyes goes to, okay, what is the gap? But there is much more in the report that we need to be aware and we need to pay attention. For example, in this report, they divide in sectors in the project, in the business, but also in the stage they are in their careers. And indeed, if you go to the very top level of seniority, the difference between men and women is still quite perceptible. But when you start going down, it's practically zero. There is a moment when you get to the graduates, to the first, second levels, that's the same. We are basically 50-50. And this is the point. How can you give these girls and these ladies starting their career in construction, how do you make sure they want to continue? Go to sites, they go to work, and they don't feel embarrassed or constrained somehow because they are women? How can you change this environment on site so they feel safe and they feel comfortable to work there? And how we make sure that they have the right form, to learn the skills that they want to learn to achieve the position they want to achieve. So when you see the report, although there was a very good improvement overall, and it's remarkable the improvement they did. I think the most important thing of the report is seeing all this work that Mace is doing to bring these very early stage people in their careers and make sure that they have this ability to grow. Because if we keep investing on them, in some years, gap on the higher hierarchy position will become zero. This project, I think that is something that we did. We taking everyone and giving everyone the same opportunity, giving everyone the same chance of learning the skills they want and to be part of a team. And we deliver a very nice project.
I agree. A beautiful project. And I very much felt that way working with HB Rivers. They're a very forward-thinking company to work for. We were in an environment where it was skills and personality, actually, cultural fit and the way you think. That was really highly prized. I think part of that is seeing women in those roles. I have worked on only a few projects where there've been any women in the senior roles. Obviously, you real standout as project director. At the time, Gabriela, there was one other project director for a building in London working. One other.
Yeah, there was only two project directors in London.
Yeah,
I think it was myself and another from Mace delivering a project I think. Anyway, there was no many. Now there is many more, not only project directors, project managers, and the amount of senior project managers that you see today, very quickly, these ladies will become project directors. So it's changing.
I love to see it. If you don't see yourself reflected in those roles, it's harder to imagine that you're going to get to that place. How hard am I going to have to work? If there's no other, am I going to have to work so much harder than the men? If there's no other women currently in those roles, what do I have to do to get there?
But I was very lucky because I found people during my career that would give me the opportunity to learn something different that perhaps they wouldn't think a woman could do. So, for example, the project we were looking before, the 20 Grosvenor Square, there I had a project director that was a incredible person. He said, "Do you want to do more? Great, come with me." And he was giving me all the opportunities to step up, to act as project manager, learn what the project manager does on site, and to get the skills and to develop myself. So he was amazing. And then when I went to HB Reeves, I was still the design manager. I always said, I want to go to a construction site by assuming slightly responsibilities from the project manager. I started demonstrating that I was able to do so. I was lucky enough to have a company that said, okay, you want to be project director. Here is the path. This is what you need to achieve. This is the time frame. You do your part, you get the promotion. I got my promotion. The moment I showed I was delivering everything they were asking, they gave the promotion.
I think you started as project director 2 weeks after I started, very quickly. And what I remember from this as well is that you did claim it. I can do this. I want to do this. You put yourself forward. They believed in you for good reason that you were able to take that forward as a project director. I do think that there's something we're not taught to do as women. We're often taught to be humble and wait for someone to choose us. It's amazing you've had incredible mentors, and I know that you have from our discussions at Mace as well, who've really kind of seen that potential in you and wanted to bring you up through your career. At the same time, I know you're someone who puts your hand up and says, I can do this. As women in construction, that we do need to claim for ourselves because the men are doing it.
But I think I agree, Eve. I think, and this is another process that we need to make sure that this change on the environment gives this opportunity, because sometimes, because the women are minority on site, and if you forget about the fact that are women, okay, any minority, when you are in this position, it's very hard to break this barrier, to raise the hand and say, I will do, live with me. It's very hard for any minority. There is a difficulty breaking this challenging what's being asked, and if you indeed can deliver or not. So first thing, if we are working, is an environment where everyone feels safe to say what they are thinking. This is the first step. And I think that in this project, when I assumed as project director, and I think that you're going to remember that this environment from day one was mandatory. everyone needs to feel welcome here. Everyone that comes to work, they need to feel that they are part of a team. We have a goal. We need to deliver this project. Ideas are welcome. Everyone knew what they were supposed to be doing. They're in this project, and it worked well.
That's amazing. Let's talk about Bloom. 7-story
Office space,
of
7
office space.
stories, terraces, was the first project in UK to achieve Brilliant Outstanding, Well Platinum, and Wire Score Platinum.
Bream and Well Score was all you, Gab.
It's very important. It's a very nice space. The initial idea was to make a building where people goes to work, but they feel like they are in a hotel almost. So they have very nice facilities. The cycle store, changing rooms, gym, everything is designed in a way to make people feel in a very high-end facility. So you don't access the cycle store through the back of house. There is a nice entrance for you to come with your bicycle. When you go to the showers, it's very special. All the design was done thinking about how people will feel in that space. There is music playing on the stairs. If you want to go to a different floor, you don't want to take the lift, you can go via stairs, and the stairs is playing music, which is very nice. There is so many details of how we are going to make this space special for the users.
And even to the kind of coffee cart as you come in, and free coffee, cool idea. And just a really beautiful space. I was just laughing to myself, remembering that music was pumping out like the whole time I worked there, walking from floor to floor. I think we had the benefit of the music while we were building it as well. Gab, you have to tell me about wearing white trousers to work.
I come from Brazil, very hot. We use white and light colors all the time. I always wear white trousers and blazers on site. I need to be able to wear what I want to work and not thinking that I need to wear something else because where I work is dirty. If I need to change what I'm going to wear because where I need to spend my whole day is a dirt space, it doesn't help. No one is going to be in their best self. No one is going to deliver to their best capabilities.
I will never forget you telling me this. We're literally in the site office. Construction works are ongoing. We know about construction. It's dirty, it's dusty, lots of people going.
No, that's the point. Construction work should not be dust and dirty. And I think this is what everyone needs to change their mentality. Today, it's funny this because now I'm in Mace delivering life science projects, which goes very well with my mentality. Because one thing we always say is think clean, build clean. When you're delivering a life science project, it's essential that it's clean. You transfer this mentality to the construction process. Today, we clear, define, and we build in a clean environment. Going back to Bloom, this mentality was not well defined. But when I started, one of the first things was this has to improve. Housekeeping in the project has to improve. It needs to be clean. The health and safety benefits of a clean, organized site, you can list thousands, okay? In terms of health and safety, going to work and feeling welcome, if the site is organized, clean, if your office is clean, it changes completely the whole project, everything. So I think that when I went there, and this was the point that I always, especially during summer, I used to go sometimes wearing white trousers to site. One day I went to talk with someone from a different main contractor. She looked at me and said, you were in the office today, right? You wasn't on site. And I said, of course I was on site today. She said, but with these trousers? I said, yes, because in my site, if I cannot show up to work with my white trousers, it's not good enough. We need to be able to go to work with white trousers in a site environment and feel that this is okay, that will not get dirty because everything else is done in a correct way.
I think it's iconic. It's indicative of how you are as project director, Gabriela. The standards you hold for yourself, for the team, and what you're delivering are very high and not particularly compromising. I think that's how it needs to be a great project director. All right, we have to talk about this very special young lady, Barbara.
This is my daughter. Her name is Barbara. It's funny because these photographs is not a sequence that was never intentional to take photographs of her. Sometimes I come from work and I have my PPE with me because I need to go to a different site the following day. So if I have my PPE with me, she always has to put it on. I think that it started when she was very young, and perhaps she would put on and feel important because it's mommy's gear to go to work. I don't know if she's going to work in construction. To be honest, I don't think it's what she will do. It's not her. But I think that the idea she has when she put on my PPE and that she feels that she can do anything she wants, incredible. When she comes home and talks to everyone, she tells me that at school, she tells her friends, Mommy is the boss. Mommy works in construction. And for her to have mommy working in construction, it's so important. It's what we should be doing with every single girl to say, look, girls, you can do whatever you want. We give the tools and leave them to dream and create whatever reality they want and give them the skills and chances to pursue that. This is what I do with her. What I teach to her is that she must be honest, true to herself, dedicated. We always tell her, never give up. And I think that it's what I did. So I'm a woman, I'm Brazilian. I came to UK, and when I arrived here, some interviews I had, recruiters asked me if I would accept a bit less than what they were offering, perhaps because I was coming from abroad. So that I've been through some situations that made me think I could do better, do more, and I never gave up. When Evie was saying about when I was promoted to project director, that's true. There was a plan in place for myself to be promoted, but some things end up changing in the company, and they needed the project director earlier than what they were expecting. And although I was still in that process, I raised my hand. I said, "You need a project director. I can do it." We need to chase what we want. Those photographs, and I hope I will have many others during the years she's growing up. The last one from Mace, my PP actually doesn't look that big anymore on her. It looks almost perfect.
It's about the size that she looks on me. She's probably nearly as tall as me or even taller.
I like the first one here from Multiplex that the hat is so big, almost falling on top of her. Yeah.
She's growing up in your PPE. It's really powerful. It's amazing to hear that she's like, she thinks you're such a badass and she's going to go like tell her friends, and no matter like what where her journey takes her, like maybe she'll say something to another friend and she's planting that seed of my mum's a badass in construction. Depending on what happens in her friends' lives, that's how it spreads and she sees it as a pillar of strength. These are the most beautiful photos and so inspiring.
And just for it to be more normal as well, becoming more normal for women to work in construction is something we see. It's super cool.
This is myself. I'm an architect. I really believe in construction. I think that's great to work in construction. I wear white trousers to go to work because I think that site has to be clean. Above all, has to be clean and organized.
Like the idea, but also like lifting the bar. You know, so like, if that's the expectation, it rebalances everybody's view of normal. Life sciences, as you said, it's critical. But in terms of raising the bar, Mace talks about this a lot. It's setting a new standard. I think it's a really good idea, actually.
It's great. I think that we always talk about construction, and I think that this idea that construction is a dirty environment is a very old idea, because construction is no longer a dirty environment. If you go to a site that you feel that is dirty and dusty, this is not a well-managed site, and it cannot happen. We need to change this.
I agree. Sometimes you just don't know what you don't know. And this is where I think site visits are really good. You talk about like experiences for other people and trying to get them to go to as many different sites, because you just learn so much. Otherwise, you can be on a project for 5 years, let's say you don't change. That's your only one view of that normal until you change again. Getting apprentices, grads, people, no matter
Exactly.
what, it's mandated that you're doing 2 to 3 site visits across different disciplines.
Stages of construction with different works happening.
I have 2 questions just to end on, if that's okay. When you're at Bloom, you step out to being a project director. In the industry, this is like the pinnacle, right? This is what anyone who's working in construction, they'll spend their lives working towards. So I wanted to ask, when you got to that role, what were key things you learned that you could share?
There is two things that comes to my mind straight away. First thing, when you come to what you believe to be the top of your career, it's not. And when you get to the point where you believe to be the top, you still don't know everything. I remember very well in the first day as project director, there was an accident on site. So how you deal with that, how you manage people, and how important is their well-being, it's something that we are never ready or we are never prepared to manage, because everyone reacts in a different way. So I think that the first thing, you are absolutely nothing without these people that are working with you. I don't know everything. I was very lucky to have a team that I do knew who to ask. I was always able to go to someone in my team and discuss the situation. The success of the project and myself as project director was because I had good people around me and everyone was working with the same goal. And there is more to do afterwards. There is much more.
But it goes back then to what you were saying earlier. Part of the success is that because you had created an environment where people could ask questions and not pretend to know everything,
Mm-hmm.
it
Mm-hmm.
was almost like a better equilibrium, for want of a better
Yeah.
expression, and that actually sort of like rebalanced it. And it sounds like that has made all the difference.
Yeah, I think that this is it. It's just to understand that different people in the team have different skills. When Eve said that when I met her, one of the reasons behind my happiness of having her on site, her CV was what we needed. The skills she brought to the team was indeed what we needed. So I knew she was going to be an asset for us. And to give people that are in different positions the autonomy to speak up, to use their background and knowledge to add to the goal and the project, is what made it different.
Definitely working with you, the standards are really high, but that kind of teamwork and that problem solving, always it was kind of like, okay, Evie, we have a problem. How are we going to solve it? Let's grab the guys construction side, project management. Let's grab Eve, Gab, like, let's come together. Let's go walk site, whatever. How are we going to solve this together? It's really cool to be a part of a team where it's our problem. The standards are high, but if you're not hitting it, it's not like disaster. It's more
But
like, how are we going to fix
that
this?
this is something I say now. One of the projects I have today, that we had a problem. And the design manager that was working the project, she came to me and said, this is happening, I need help. She was very anxious about what was the size of the project, the problem, what could become. And then I said to her, I said, look, this is not your problem, it's our problem. So don't worry to think, not even for a second, saying, I fail, I did something wrong, it's my problem, I need to solve. No, don't lose your very nice night of sleep, because it's not your problem, it's everyone's problem. We will all get together and we will solve, and this is what we did. And with other people getting involved, we end up finding a very nice solution that worked perfectly well. Job done. Let's go to the next problem. My father would say, we are here because there are problems, because if there was no problems, we would all lose our jobs. So we
The
need a
amount of
problem.
times, the amount of times that I would be like, Gabriela, such and such has happened. And you would say, Evie, don't worry, we'll fix it. It's like always the kind of like the standard response. And we did.
These sayings are really important to get people to be more forthcoming about issues rather than hiding it, because that's when they become big issues. And like,
Yeah.
I had someone like a line manager, and he used to say in construction, Sarah, don't worry about it, more was lost in the war. It took me a little while to get it, but then the more I thought about it, it's actually a really neat, like,
Yeah.
and, more was lost in the war. Like, don't worry about it. I might have screwed up. And he was like, more was lost in the war. No one's died. It was nothing. Don't worry about it. My last question, it's rare to meet people that cross continents in construction. And I wanted to ask around your experience of working on construction sites in Brazil to working on construction sites in the UK. And if there was any difference.
Yeah, there was. So I worked in construction sites in Brazil, in Spain, in UK. I think that the difference first, the first difference, health and safety. If you imagine what is health and safety in UK today, Spain is 3 to 5 years behind, Brazil perhaps 15 years behind. That is quite a shock to see how people still work in Brazil. I think this is the first thing that calls attention. There is another thing, the weather. So here in UK, if we are like 26, 27 degrees, people need to stop. Some places, depends on how the setup of the site is, you need to stop because people feel sick, they cannot work. In Brazil, in Rio de Janeiro, in that project, was like 43 degrees and people were working as if nothing was happening. They take off their shirt because it's too hot. They don't want to use the high vis because it's too hot. So there is this health and safety problems, but they are working. It's perfectly fine. So this is it's funny. And I think that again, in terms of in Brazil, even with women, I think there is a difference the way they treat us there, because they are much more polite. When when they see us coming, they are like, oh, she's the engineer. You need to consider that the people who have the labor in Brazil working on site, the level of instruction is different from the level of instruction that you have in other parts of the world. So they are very simple people from a different background. When they see us on site, in their eyes, we went to university. Can you imagine? For in their view, it's like, oh my God, she's like a doctor. She's amazing. So they are very polite. They are very nice with us. They try to please us. If it's too hot, they say, no, come here, because there is a shadow. You can protect yourself. It's completely, we do barbecues on sites in Brazil to celebrate milestones.
Yeah,
They make barbecues.
Working 40 degrees plus, like there are some similarities. Health and safety is stricter in Australia.
Yeah, it's a completely different industry. It's improving very quick. Today I say that it's like 10 years ago. The difference, if we have this conversation a year from now, I can guarantee to you that I will say we are almost there. They are changing very quickly, especially there is a lot of new regulations are putting in place. The regulations is mostly done based on existing regulations from Europe, from UK. So this is changing, and it's changing very, very fast.
Cool.
If anybody was interested to like get in contact with you or to join your team, how should they connect with you?
Anyone can find me on LinkedIn, search for Gabriela Guizzo, and we can exchange messages, we can talk. If it's something that we think that's useful, we can have a cup of coffee.
Cool. Well, look, thank you so much for joining. It's been unbelievably insightful and such a range of projects. Thank you. What's next for Gabriela?
Ooh.
You got a promotion, right? You've smashed the next layer, right? Since I was like the pinnacle, and it's like, nope, next one.
Look, when I started working for Mace, my current line manager said to me, he asked me exactly that. He said, what do you want to do next? And I said, I always think that there is always something to learn, always something different we can do. The moment I think I have nothing else to do, I will retire, and I will find something to do, even retired. I don't know. I will find something different that I can learn and I don't know, crochet perhaps.
You strike me as the individual that will go on to like even being an expert witness, or like you just your career is incredible and something many will look up to and aspire to. So thank you.
Gab, I felt like I already knew you really well, but I feel like I know you so much better from this conversation, and I appreciate that. I'm so honored that you joined us.
No, thank you for the invitation. It was very
Absolutely.
nice. So let's see what's the next project that we are going to do, Eve.
Yeah, let's see. Thank you for listening to Hard Hat Heroines, project highlights from women in construction. We'd like to give a special shout out to our sponsors, Construction Sport, the charity Building Teams and Saving Lives, Centera Project Communication Software, quicker than emails, better than WhatsApp, less soul destroying than paper, and the Tender Trainers, teaching subcontractors how to tender. Subtract the stress, add the profit. Thanks everyone. We'll see you next time.